That way we don't forget.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. It is 4 o'clock, and I guess I will call the meeting to order, but in order to have a meeting, I have to have someone from Charlottesville that's an elected official. I believe we can have a meeting, but we can't take any votes, Chip. Is that correct?
That's right.
And I'm
really,
looking at the screen. I don't see Lloyd or Nakaya.
And the only thing we have are the minutes
Right.
today.
Right. Has anybody, Sarah or Jessica, have you all heard from the city?
I've not heard one way or the other from either representative.
Okay. Garland, let me ask you, have you heard from either one of the city folks? Okay. Well, okay. Then let's do this, recognizing that we can't.
I just got a message, Diantha, from Lloyd. He's looking for the link. So I'm going to send that to him now. So hopefully he'll be here in just a second.
Great. Then in an effort to keep us moving along, since I've called the meeting to order, let me go on and read the notice of electronic meeting due to COVID, and we can get that part of the meeting started. This meeting of the Regional Transit Partnership is being held pursuant to item 4.0-01 of the approved state budget, House Bill 29, that allows public bodies to hold electronic meetings in the current COVID-19 emergency, in that it is impractical or unsafe to assemble in a single location, and that the purpose of the meeting is to discuss or transact the business statutorily required or necessary to continue operations of the public body. This meeting is being held via electronic video and audio means through Zoom online meetings and is accessible to the public with closed captioning, and there will be an opportunity for public comment during that portion of the agenda. This meeting is also accessible by telephone conference call. Notice has been provided to the public through notice at the TJPDC offices, to the media website posting and agenda. The meeting minutes will reflect the nature of the emergency. The meeting was held by electronic communications means and the type of electronic communication means by which the meeting was held. A recording of the meeting will be posted at the tjpdc.org website within 10 days of the meeting. And do we have Lloyd yet? Oh, we have Nakaya. There's Nakaya. Great. All right. So we have one person from the city. Nakaya is here, and we're waiting for Lloyd to get in. So with that, why don't we do some introductions? And I'll get Jessica. Do you want to call the folks, and we'll see who all's here officially for the record and introductions?
Sure. So correct me if I'm wrong, Diantha. I'm just going to read the names and people can note if they are here or not.
Yeah, they can either raise their hand or say yes, or just so we can identify that they're here. That'd be great.
So Diantha.
I'm here, yes.
Lloyd Snook.
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, there's Lloyd.
Lucas Ames.
Here.
Randy Parker.
Here.
Great. B. Lepisto Kirtley.
Here.
Nakaya Walker.
Present.
Neil Sherman. Oh, he's not here. He'll be late. He'll be joining us at 5 p.m. And Becca White.
I'm here.
Diantha, would you like me to read the non-voting and alternates?
Yeah, why don't you do that just so we know who is everybody that is actually here? That'd be great.
Great. And everyone, I have the list of people up on my screen, so I can't see you. So if you could verbally note that you're here, that's helpful. Thank you. Okay, Karen Davis. Brad Sheffield.
I'm here. Sorry, had to unmute.
Okay. Garland Williams.
Here.
Jawan Lee.
Here.
Trevor Henry.
Present.
Kim McManus. Jim Foley.
Here.
Allison DeTunk, Chris Rowland, and Sally LeBeau.
I'm here.
Great. That's all of our non-voting members. And for staff, Chip Boyles,
Here.
Sarah Pennington,
Here.
Lucinda Shannon. Great. Is there anyone else who I haven't called?
That's great, Jessica. Thank you. So we have a pretty full cadre of folks, and that's great. Our first item on our agenda are matters from the public, and the public has 3 minutes to speak. And Jessica, do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No, we do not have any members of the public to speak.
Okay, I can offer, is there anyone, I see Sean, I'm wondering is there anyone that wants to speak from the public? Nope, I'm not seeing anything. Going. Okay, all right. With that, our only action item today are our minutes from August the 27th of 2020. And I'm sure you all had time to take a look at these minutes, and would entertain a motion to approve if there are no corrections that need to be made.
Move approval.
Okay, so B has moved approval,
Second.
and Randy seconded. All right, so all those in favor of approving the minutes from August the 27th, 2020, please say yes in the affirmative.
Yes.
Yes.
Anyone abstaining?
I have to abstain. I wasn't there. I haven't seen the minutes.
Okay, so Lloyd is abstaining, and any no's? Okay, so we have the minutes from August 27th have been approved. And I see that Chip has already put up our first screen. So Chip, would you like me to turn this over to you, a review of our strategic plan?
I will be glad to. Thank you. I can't see what you see on it. Can you all read it okay in this format?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. As long as if you can't, I can switch it to a full screen, but it moves it to a different monitor. And I'm not so technologically savvy that I don't know that it could go away forever. So what we have on the agenda today, and all three of the next items kind of all tie into each other. And so we may actually be blending into each of the three items as we discuss. But the initial discussion is just to give, we do have a few new members that have not gone through this discussion with us. I'm not going to go into great detail at all, but just to touch on the strategic plan that the RTP developed and adopted 2 years ago now, and then touch on some of the progress that we've made. Also touch on some of the longer term goals that came out of that strategic planning. And then we will also really be spending some time on things that we did not anticipate for short-term goals that have been brought on by the pandemic. And there we'll be inviting our transit providers to really try to give us some insight as to how things have changed for them, any additional threats that they may be foreseeing, as well as any opportunities that this might bring about. But in 2018, with the help of John Martin with SIR out of Richmond, SIR has done transit planning, envisioning, and strategic planning for a number of transit agencies and organizations, not just in Virginia, but around the country. And John and SIR, I know, was very instrumental in working with the Richmond, Greater Richmond Transit and their bus rapid transit line, the Pulse. So we're very lucky to be able to get John. We had a couple of different exercises with some large groups, as well as some subcommittees that had been formed. And during that process, the RTP came up with, even if it was just temporary for us, and we would be looking in the future to solidify this, a mission and a vision statement for the Regional Transit Partnership. I won't read those, but they are there. And I just want to say, for the details of the plan, they are on our website, and it gives the background and how we got to where we are, all with notes from John Martin. Today, what we're trying to do is just to give this overview of the plans, strategic plan goals, and progress towards those goals, to begin to consider some new short-term goals based upon some of the success that we've had with our initial short-term goals. We've accomplished things, and we need more short-term goals to work towards, but also really try to address some of the recent conditional changes that we've experienced because of the pandemic and what that looks like for our immediate future. We then want to talk about what that means for our longer-term future, and also talk specifically about our long-term goals, which are really hinged around a regional visioning plan that we'll be able to give you an update on. As you all know, we applied for funding for that, and we're awaiting decision right now for it. And finally, just to sum up the day, is to hear from you all, to both the TJPDC staff, as well as for the RTP leadership, where's the direction that we need to be focusing our efforts for calendar year 2021 and on into 2022. We will not meet again until January, so this will give us the direction we need prior to going into 2021. Here are two slides that are from the strategic plan. These were the two summary pages that SIR produced for us. They gave us two immediate actions and then the longer term actions. You can see I have struck through some of the actions that we had identified that we have accomplished. We have the committee in place. There has been a funding agreement between CAT, the City of Charlottesville, and Albemarle on their annual service and funding mechanism for those services in Albemarle County. We've been working with CAT and the city, as well as JAUNT, on reviewing annual budgets. And we have also developed a budget for the RTP itself that helps to fund not just the staff time spent on the RTP, but we also reserve a certain amount of money for specific projects, what we call pass-through projects. For instance, item number 4, we had reserved some money to pay for a trip to visit a peer transit system that we have not been able to do, and not really sure when that might be possible now with the pandemic. Number 5, the 5th goal that we had was to pursue a funding strategy for a regional transit plan, what we've later coined a regional visioning plan. We did submit the application to DRPT, and while we really thought we were going to be able to announce to you today, the funding was approved for that. It was not approved at the current CTB meeting, and they will take it back up in either November or December. The CTB meeting, I was watching it, but their Zoom meeting, or they do it on YouTube, got cut off before the meeting ended. But the direction that I heard them giving was that it would be reconsidered in either November or December, along with DRPT's 6-year improvement plan. So we're still waiting to hear for that one, as well as the Albemarle County Transit Expansion Plan. 2 of the items that were immediate actions that we haven't yet completed, but do tie into the regional visioning plan, is to formulate a visioning statement for the RTP, as well as our regional service providers, and doing this through short on-board surveying residents around the region, and coming up with what is it that the public needs and would like to see from a transit system outside of just the city of Charlottesville. And then from that, developing and adopting a regional transit visioning statement. Of course, that would occur after the visioning plan is completed. Finally, the longer term goals almost all center around completing this visioning plan. And you keep hearing me say this a lot, but if you had participated in that strategic planning process with John Martin, a lot of the discussion there was around the need for this regional plan. Without that, it's really hard to document and hard to make a request to the state for funding without some type of agreement among all of our jurisdictions toward where we're trying to go with regional transit. So these are the longer term goals. Some things that are within here could begin even in the early stages of the visioning planning process, like the community engagement. We could go ahead and begin that process. But one of the more important things I would say to take away from this slide is when we're preparing the scope of work for the regional visioning plan, we need to make sure that all of these types of activities are included in that scope of work. Couple of things that we could do as we're preparing that scope is to go ahead and start to create a kind of a grassroots, here it's called grass tops, but education and communication campaign, putting together some regional leaders so that they understand and they can help us to increase participation and get the word out how important it is for us to address transit in a regional capacity for us. So building that coalition is something that we could initiate in January prior to getting a consultant on board for the regional visioning plan. That's the overview. What we will do is move from this into the short-term goal setting, and this will be the opportunity, I think, for everybody to discuss and pitch in of what are some of the short-term goals now that we've accomplished what did come out of the strategic planning process and begin to work on with our transit stakeholders beginning in January. The first item under the short-term goal setting, as I said, we expected the CTB to approve our 2 plans in October at their meeting earlier this week. That did not happen. It wasn't that it was any discussion and they couldn't come to consensus. It wasn't enough information available to the CTB from DRPT at the time for a decision to be made. And so they asked to come back to them with a very comprehensive package at one of their future meetings. I was confused as to whether that meeting will be November or December. I heard a couple of people say different months. So I'm having to inquire unless Wood or Neil's on the call today, and they can give us an update as to exactly when we could expect that to go to the CTB. I can let you know that both myself and Chairperson McKeel, we contacted the 3 CTB members that cover our region, and all 3 of them are very aware that this will be coming before them shortly. So we've tried to cover that base. With that, I'll turn it back to Chairman McKeel, and we can kind of start talking about any of the pandemic impacts on services from JAUNT, from CAT, and from UTS.
That's great, Chip. Thank you. And if we could take down the document, I would
I can
appreciate it so we could, see everybody.
I think I can.
Yeah.
Here we go.
There we go. That's great. Thank you. Welcome back. I think the thought was today to have a work session for our group to discuss transit in light of the pandemic. And I will just say, is our strategic plan still relevant? Do we need to articulate a new direction in some areas? What is absolutely the most important thing about transit today, which may not have been true when we were looking at our strategic plan? What do our best practices look like now? And what does a return look like? That sounds like a lot. But I do think many of us seem to think that we needed to have a discussion because certainly the world of transit has changed. And we put some bullets underneath both the short term and the long term to sort of spur discussion. I hope that you guys will open up and just chat as best you can about what you're seeing the impacts were and how transit might have changed in your world. And going forward, what are some of the things that we need to really be thinking about? Chip, do you want to start with, we could just start the discussion first with the, we have here impacts on services, immediate needs. We don't have to stick exactly to this list. Certainly people are welcome to bring up other things as things occur to them. But I think we were hoping to have a free flow discussion about the world of transit going forward and lessons learned about our transit services.
Madam Chair, yes, I'd be glad to just get the ball rolling there. I think you've done a great job setting it up. I think one of the things that just to get the discussions going, especially from the transit providers, is with these recent changes, what can the RTP help with? You know, whether it's the personal protective equipment, if you're in need of, consolidated purchasing that might be a benefit, anything that the RTP as decision makers within our region that they may be able to help with, we would love to hear. And any of the items, these items were things that we just brainstormed that were possibilities, but there may be things that we were just totally missing of that we would love to hear. And I think, you know, through the leadership of the three transit providers, and well as the school systems transit, are there opportunities that we can help, or are there threats we can help to overcome? And I think that was the intent, as the chairperson said.
Is anyone doing any, I know there's the standalone HEPA air filtration units that can be installed. Is anyone looking into that on their buses?
That's a great question. I never really heard, I know we're talking about air filters in buildings, and the schools in both the county office building have addressed, you know, air filtration and HVAC systems, but I hadn't really thought about it with buses. I guess that's naive on my part. So talk to me a little bit about that. Can you talk to us?
So, yeah, so one of our OEMs can supply a standalone HEPA air filter, which you would install on the bus. Unfortunately, they're expensive. They're like $1,200, and you have to take it down to the dealer. And they're noisy. They're like 75 decibels. So I don't know. We're looking at that. I don't think we're going to spend the money to install them, but I just wanted to see if anyone else had any experience with that.
Becca looks like Becca, have you?
No, we're a little different. You know, our length of trip is so short compared to the other properties that, you know, that's one of the things that helps, I guess, with us, because the trip duration is so short. What I had on my list were more things like testing opportunities for frontline. I mean, that's one of the feedback points we've gotten a lot from our drivers whom are all on the front lines, and you know, asymptomatic testing, hazard pay has come up, and then vaccine deployment, you know, wondering about any sort of clout there may be, or influence there may be from the RTP regarding recognizing the bus drivers as frontline, just as frontline as healthcare. I mean, on our grounds, we are taking the healthcare workers to their frontline jobs. So, you know, so those were the things that came to mind for me. But so I don't mean to depart from Jim's air filter question, but that since Diana called on me.
Well, I'm
I have
gonna
a question about that. Are you saying that you all ruled out that the need for the air filters because the trips are short?
We did not go, we didn't even evaluate it. Our trips are less than 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes. So we didn't even look into it.
So tell me, Becca, what your capacities are. What are you doing with your capacities on your buses then?
Well, see, and that's a little different as well. And Sally's on the call as well. She's our partner at the health system trying to navigate all this, but took advantage of the infectious disease professionals at UVA, took a look at boarding by the back door, mandated masks, which we have had full compliance. I think we've only had a very few issues with mask compliance, and trip duration. And we were able to get a boarding recommendation of 20 passengers, which is very significant when we were moving around 1,300 people in 2 hours. We moved 1,300 people in 2 hours in the morning, and then 1,300 people in 2 hours in the afternoon. So it's a little, you know, since we're such a compact service area with a very rapid, intense, high frequency service, it's a little, it applies to our situation. It may not apply to CAT or JAUNT or school bus, because those trips are longer. School buses don't have the back doors. Mask mandate is a little harder when we can say that it's a personnel policy that you have to wear that, you know, you gotta wear the mask.
Right.
Anyway, I don't know if that's helpful. I don't know, Sally, I know is on the call, if she wanted to add anything, but.
Sally, do you want to add anything?
No, I think Becca summed it up.
Okay. All right.
I
Garland.
would still-
Oh, go ahead. Nakai,
Yes.
sorry.
Yes, talking about, you know, what they've said about the virus, how it lingers in the air, and the fact that those drivers can't get on and off the bus, I know they're not our drivers, but if Garland said that to us, I would still want to know more information about how they were being taken care of, and even the people who are your employees who are riding those and students who are riding the buses. 5 minutes is a long time. The masks, of course, we know that they help, but, you know, I posted on Facebook a couple weeks ago that, you know, reminding people that their mask is not, they're not God, right? And a lot of people think that they are this, you know, 100% protection, and it's not. So that's it. But I understand that they're y'all employees and students and drivers, but that really caused a lot of alarm in me, you know, to hear that.
I'd be curious to know what the other transporters are doing, because this is not without risk. There's risk involved here. So, I mean, we're supplying masks. They can wear shields if they want. We disinfect in between each run. And we just actually purchased 4 new pieces of equipment that can produce disinfectant. It's a hypochlorous acid solution that is almost harmless, but it's very effective and does not need dried, doesn't need to be wiped dry. But that's about all we're doing. We cannot put plexiglass or soft see-through plastic curtains on the bus. The VDOE will not allow that, although NHTSA is starting to come around with that, but I don't know what some of the other folks are doing.
Just curious, Becca, do you all have plexiglass around your drivers or anything?
No, but because we have rear doors, which a school bus does not have a rear door,
Right,
I don't believe,
right.
and I don't think the JAUNT vehicles have them either. We are boarding by the back door, and and then in the aisle, there is a barrier that keeps the passengers 6 feet away from the driver. So no, we didn't install a curtain or a barrier or a sheet or anything, but we just have like like little chains that we can put up and down, plastic chains. Because and we're only using the front door for people with disabilities, that mobility that might need that ramp to enter the bus. So we'll deploy and get the person on the bus safely that way, but no sheeting or anything like that.
Garland, you want to address the?
Sure. So let's go to Jim's question first. So
Mhm.
looking at doing upgrading we have upgraded our filters, and we're looking to actually put in an ultraviolet cleaning system on our HVA system. So we're evaluating that process right now. There are 3 systems that I'm aware of on the West Coast that actually have installed them. Some level of success. Some folks say it's good, some say it's bad. It's a pretty expensive endeavor, so we're going to take our time and evaluate that. We have done as much as we can. We're constantly cleaning. We hire a professional cleaning crew. We actually installed a see-through curtain on all of our buses. It provides an additional layer of protection for our drivers. We are rear loading. We're actually, the curtain that we put in, we're ordering another round of them. We're going to replace them here in probably another 3 weeks.
Garland, is that on your CAT buses?
On our CAT buses. Yeah, of course, we can't put them on the school buses. We would love to, because it would give the driver an additional layer of protection, and then see-through. So hopefully something does change on the public education side to allow us to do something to keep them safe. But keeping our air clean, as far as on the CAT public transit side, we do something that kind of, we consider it an upgrade or enhancement to our cleaning, that we issue basically Lysol to all of our drivers. They take it with them every single trip. So when every hour they spray some to keep the air, because we know the particulates stay in the air up to 3 hours. So every end of the line, they're expected to spray just a little bit to keep the air circulating and keeping it clean for everyone. And I think that's helped a lot, because our numbers, we haven't had any, knock on wood, any major incidents with COVID.
So it's interesting because, and I guess I just have the question about thinking unified procurement. If the filters are something that folks would like, is there a way that we could work together? I'm just asking this.
I just want to know, that information you shared, I have.
Oh, I think that was Sean, maybe, I'm not sure. Anyway, is there an interest, or is there a way that a unified procurement and Brad, I'm sorry, you're up in the corner and I almost didn't see you. Why don't you speak to this first? I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries. I think ours is a little different in that the type of bus that we operate, it's a little bit more of a challenge because of the way people come and go at the front door. There is no other entry or exit point. We have tested out plexiglass shields between the driver and those entry points, but we're finding that they're not able to hold up to the vibration of operations. So we're having to try some other approaches. We need the ability for drivers to push those shields to the side to assist passengers in case of an emergency. So they can't just be permanently mounted. They've got to be on some sort of hinge or something. So that's been our challenge from that protection standpoint, is that we just haven't found the type of approach that's going to hold up to the road usage. We are looking at things like face shields and such. We are building more time into our schedules, more gaps for our drivers to wipe down the buses in between trips. So we are trying to give them more time to do this kind of steps.
Yeah, I think we all have bought as much PPE as we possibly can get.
Right.
We're doing
Well,
all of the, we're doing
Yeah.
everything we can, and the CAT is actually the last step for us. Is actually we got face shields that are coming in on Tuesday, so they'll have we've got everything we can get our hands on.
Are you requiring those, Garland, or they're, if drivers want them, they can get them?
We are acquiring 500 of them, and we're issuing each driver 2.
I'm sorry, requiring.
We are requiring them. We're issuing them 2 of them. They can use them if they want to. We're not requiring them to use it.
Becca, you had something you wanted to say.
Well, same clarification. I was just gonna, and sorry to go down the rabbit hole, but with a face shield, are they gonna wear the shield and a mask or just the face shield?
So we have different level of masks. So we have like the dust covered mask. So we're asking them if they're going to use the face shield to potentially use the smaller face cover, the smaller dust cover mask, the surgical mask. But if they're not going to use that, we're asking them to use the cloth or the K95 masks that we have, which are the high-end masks. And we bought tons of them, and we issue them every day.
Okay.
So going back to the question is that if everybody, it sounds like folks have an interest in the same issues, they're approaching it different ways. But is there a way that a unified procurement would help save money, would help with just organization or standardization, or I'm just wondering. I mean, it sounds like Garland's going to be doing some studies on the air filter, right?
So we're gonna take a look at the air filter. So on the procurement side, for us, speed is an issue. So we don't want to make sure we don't want to bog anything down in the pipeline. We do a procurement. We actually reach out to Becca or Brad and say, hey, we've done something. Would you like to use it? But trying to get everybody to get on the same sheet of music at one time it's a time issue. And I'm trying to react to our drivers saying they're not feeling safe. They want something. We're going to try to get it right then. So we're reacting to the level of caution that my drivers feel they need.
But if you're reaching out to Brad and to Becca, you're actually doing that anyway. You're working together. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out a way to maybe simplify it, not make it take longer, but to actually simplify it. And maybe that won't work. So, I mean, I'm just, yeah.
Garland, I'm sorry, Becca.
I was just gonna add that we've been in good touch already, and where possible, we have shared specifications on cleaning or and such, and been invited, Garland being the inviter, thank you, on some of these more practical everyday matters as we all are trying to find our way. Sorry, go Jim.
Yeah, I think one of the things that, Jim, and I'm sorry to jump in front of you, but one of the things that we have the luxury of, or the benefit of, is that FTA does give us information about particular vendors or a listing of, vendors that has certain supplies, and we've been tapping into those. And then we've established a number of relationships here in town and in Richmond that can get us supply. So we've been really tapping into that, especially in this COVID period.
Yeah, we've been okay so far on PP. Can you send me the information on, you said you were looking at a ultraviolet type filtration for your air?
For the transit vehicle, but we can definitely let you see what we got.
Yeah, if you could send me some information, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other thoughts around this topic or any other? One of the items we have on our agenda is to talk about lessons learned, what's working well and not so well. Any thoughts on?
One thing I'll speak to that is unified communication. I think it's going really well. As we look at pushing something out, there's definitely discussions going on about involving everybody in that, especially if it's going to be a broad approach to communication. So hopefully that will continue, because I think going forward, there's going to be a need for more and more communication and more positive communication about what safety measures are being taken and so forth. We can't just assume something we put out today is going to be remembered 2 months from now. So I think that's going really well. I think, I don't know about Garland and Becca and Jim and others, but we hadn't really allocated the money for that piece. And so we need to kind of reassess what kind of investment we'll have in the communication side.
Okay. And maybe I don't want to take us down in a rabbit hole too much, but Trevor and I was looking to see who might be here from the city. When we're talking about vehicles and air filtration and the need to put some employees together in a big van, would there be any connection to what the city and the county might need along those lines? Because I guess what I'm thinking about is VDOT is struggling right now and Dominion Power, all of the companies are struggling with how to get people where they're going because you can't put them in vehicles together. And it's sort of the same scenario as we're talking about it here with some of the JAUNT vans and cat vehicles, perhaps. I'm just a thought.
Francis, Trevor. So in our current state, we're still primarily, work from home as a county and operating our business that way. Obviously, I'm at the county office building. We have limited staff here, so that need currently doesn't really exist. I would say, kind of moving forward, at some point we will come back to some sort of normal. It's not going to be like it was before. So those kinds of technologies, I think, would be interesting to know of. I'm not sure how that applies necessarily for kind of the day-to-day work that we do local government wise.
Well, I was thinking about our inspectors. I know we have inspectors going out, but maybe they're going out one at a time.
They're going, well, traditionally they do that. And if they're together, they're masked. So that's how we're kind of handling that, that scenario. I had a question I love the term Jim used, the transporters. I think I'm going to adopt that in talking about, JAUNT and CAT and UVA. But, we had a board meeting yesterday. It was actually a work session at one point with our board of supervisors and school board. And we were starting to, kind of set the stage for our FY22 budget planning. And our CFO used the term, or made the statement, that the emergency is now our new reality. And so I'm kind of curious, like from a planning profile, where, Garland, Brad, Becca, where you guys are for the work that you're doing now, that Jim, that is in the emergency, are you planning that we're going to kind of stay in that mode, until 2022? Like what's your horizon, your planning horizon as it relates to the kind of the pandemic and what is becoming now or how we operate? So I'm curious on that as it relates to transit.
So you probably know ours, Trevor. So we look at every quarter, we reassess what stage we're going into. So there's 5 different stages. Stage 5 is back to normal. Stage 1 is all virtual. So there's 3 stages in between there. The school board recently voted to go from stage 2 to stage 3. Starting November 9th. And we need to decide that about 4 to 5 weeks before it's implemented so we can build routes. So that's kind of what we're doing. So our next horizon would be near the end of January, where we'd have to figure out, all right, after that, are we going to go to stage 4, stay in stage 3, go back to stage 2? And it depends on a lot of, health data from the community. So we work closely with the Thomas Jefferson Health District to look at that data, and then staff makes a recommendation to Matt, who makes a recommendation to the school board. So that's kind of how we do it. So we're doing it kind of a quarter at a time. I don't know any other way to do it. I mean, who knows what'll happen next school year? Hopefully we'll have vaccines all in place by then, but.
Brad, do you want to?
Yeah, for us, we've been tracking any additional costs separately. So as we're putting together our budget now for FY22, it's looking at what our normal expenses are and then what those added COVID expenses look like, to be able to compartmentalize them so that if they actually do start to lessen, we're able to isolate it and adjust accordingly. That's the best that we can do, because you're talking about putting a budget together basically a year from now that you would be using, and it's pretty hard to tell what that would look like.
Thanks, Brad. And I should have clarified too. I guess I asked that question in the context of the budget, which of course is drives a lot of what we do. But I guess I was kind of asking, like, what are the things that you're doing now that you may want to then extend even when we get back to what is like post-emergency? I'll give you an example. For local government, we didn't have a work from home policy, and we created one in 3 days whenever we forced everybody out of the office, and we've been able to keep county operations functioning since the pandemic hit, and so we've moved that now into a formal work from home teleworking that we're working with departments. So we imagine, when we get to, using Jim's term, stage 5 of when things are kind of more back to normal, we've upgraded all our conference rooms, and we've made the assumption that we'll never have a meeting that everybody is in the room together. And so we are anticipating, always having a virtual component to our county operations. Do things like that translate into the transit world? I guess it's a budget question, but it's really like, how are we changing our operations for what might be kind of where we're at now and into the future? I'm sorry if that's a confusing question, but hopefully it explains kind of what I meant by it.
And to be honest with you, Trevor, to add to that, when we look at, and Jim, when we look at the school division is down now almost 1,000, Albemarle County School Division is down about 1,000 students. Now, some of those students may choose not to come back into a classroom setting. I heard Matt Hoss say on a recent virtual meeting that 30% of high schoolers right now are saying that they would prefer learning by Zoom, or not by Zoom, but by virtual. And while that 30% may not be an accurate number, I mean, that was just, it would seem like to me that we are going to be changing the numbers of students in our schools. Maybe not at the primary grade, but who knows? I mean, it is a different world. And I think that's what you're getting at, Trevor.
Yes, ma'am.
I will say one of the major things that came out of this for us that is pretty positive is the ability for some of our reservations and dispatch staff to work from home, which this pandemic kind of forced us to make sure the right infrastructure could be in place for them to be able to take those calls sitting at home. And it's worked without pretty much any kind of hitch. I mean, we've seen some pretty phenomenal success, which is really great when it comes to if someone's got to stay home to take care of a child or a parent or anything, being able to allow them to telecommute in that role, that frontline role is pretty powerful. In addition, it's really challenged the fact that we've been shoehorning a lot of our staff in the current facility that we have in the buses as well. And this has really shown that we can't do that anymore. We definitely have this hive approach to some of the reservations and dispatch drivers, road supervisors, to where they're all in the same spaces. And clearly that can't exist now. And we see that is part of that future issue where we need better space planning now to just be ready for how we come out of this. But the two coupled together is pretty interesting. People being able to work remotely, but again, those frontline staff being able to telecommute was pretty powerful.
Mm-hmm. Garland, do you have any?
Yeah, I got a lot to unpack here. So, so for CAT, it's our model is in urban style transit. It's hard for a lot of it to be telecommuting, right? Teleworking from home. The majority of my staff are are driving, right? Or supervising. So they're actually on the road or they're in the dispatch office. I got 4 mechanics and that's caused an issue. So what I would say is it made me reassess our the number of staff we have, because we were really looking at the number of hours that they're putting in. Even in the pandemic, they're still working tons of hours. We're trying to keep them as safe as we possibly can. We just don't have enough of them. We don't have enough mechanics. I have 38 vehicles, of which 17 of them are down today. That is incredible. Yes. So if we weren't running Lifeline service, a reduced service, there's no way that I could provide you with the service. And that's because of decisions that were made prior to me getting here, the type of vehicle that we bought. The hybrids are bad.
Right.
Too long. It's a snowball effect.
Right.
We've been managing the Lifeline service as much as we can, and we haven't missed any service. But if we're actually talking about implementing full service, there's no way I can turn full service on. If everybody said they wanted it, there's no way I could do it. So we are getting ourselves out of this. The pandemic has provided us, unfortunately, an opportunity to get our vehicles to third-party vendors to fix engines, which I've got 4 or 5. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 that went out today for engine overhauls, and 3 for transmission overhauls that my staff can't do. And then I've got 1 spare today, and that's the first time I've had a spare in over a month. So we are managing to what we have, but there's no way, if anybody was to say, we want more service, I can't give you more service. But we're working through that model. And one, I don't have enough vehicles, I don't have enough drivers, and I don't have enough mechanics. Other than that, we're fine.
So let me ask a quick question. I don't know what Lifeline service is. What's Lifeline service?
The service that we have out there right now, which is our scaled down model, where we're providing essential services to hospitals, medical centers, the service that we're running today, with an abbreviated stop at 9 p.m.
Okay, I just never heard the term before, I guess. It was probably just me. Jim, the mechanic piece, I know you have a very significant mechanic facility with Albemarle County Schools, but that's not the kind of mechanic service you can offer, or, I mean, I'm just asking.
Well, normally we could for a price.
You could do that.
Yes, we
I'm just
could.
saying that there's some synergy here maybe, because you may have in your backyard a mechanic facility, mechanic car repair facility or bus repair that might be able to help you with some of that work. I don't know. I'm just saying.
So one of the things is I like the fact that Jim offered, and we'll explore that. But one of the things we also have to be very careful of is the bus manufacturer that we buy from. If the folks aren't trained to do their products, they will void our what do you call
warranty.
it?
Your warranty.
Warranties,
Yeah, and I get that.
on the different products, right? So there's an engine warranty, there's a transmission warranty. So depending on what they're doing, and if the person they come back and say wasn't certified to do it, they're not going to credit us with the issue. So
Yeah, no, that's understandable, but certainly your school buses we could work.
School buses. Well, school buses we don't have an issue. I mean, because that goes to the fleet yard and they're taking care of that.
I see.
Because we have separate federal money. We can't mix the two. So we are actually we have our own set of mechanics that are working on it.
Yeah, we wouldn't be certified to work on your.
Yeah, I'm just curious if there was some synergy that could happen. Yeah.
We do work on almost all the private schools in the county. We maintain their buses.
Yeah, I knew you did.
Yeah, it's very nice.
So Becca,
but can I go back to
sure.
with Trevor? Are there things that we're going to need for the budget going forward? So we're looking at how we're delivering service. So I actually have a consultant on board looking at our service model right now. And if we come out of the pandemic, when we come out of the pandemic, what does that service model look like? We also would look at how we are cleaning. And that is a process that needs to continue going forward. And that's a pretty expensive cost. If we didn't have the CARES money, that we wouldn't be able to do it. And there needs to continue to be that level of cleaning to make sure that the public feels safe when riding public transportation. Our cleaning bill is fairly high. I mean, we're at $500,000 already, and growing. So it's not a small endeavor to keep these things up and clean and keeping them well.
So is there some synergy around cleaning supplies? Because it sounds like to me you're using different products. Just again, trying to say, is there a way to save money with procurement and look at a cleaning product that works for everybody and would be able to?
We already did that.
Already on that, do you include the schools?
No, I don't think I reached out to Jim, but I know I reached out to Becca and but Jim, I apologize because we didn't buy it for schools at the time because we were not really running the school buses during the summertime. We were parking them except for the 4 or 5 that we were using for food delivery, and we were cleaning those a different way. But we just actually extended some of the cleaning products down to schools. But we did buy a hospital grade cleaning product that we're using every single night. All of us bought like 55-gallon drums of it once we found the product.
Yeah, we're real excited about our new disinfectant because we can produce it ourselves with just water. And it's much less irritating than the disinfectant we were using before.
Right.
So we never have to worry about a supply problem anymore or the disinfectant being irritating to the drivers as they spray it through the air. So we're real excited about that. We just put it online this week. So.
So there may be
Can I ask a question of everybody, which is how much what kind of resources do we have for what the consensus is on the data about COVID, how it's spread, what the best practices are? I mean, just from the media, it seems like they're getting more and more away from contact, from surfaces being a source of spread and more on aerosols. And for example, earlier we were talking about HEPA filters and what's the difference between a HEPA filter and leaving the windows open on the bus and running the heat? I mean, just things like that. It seems to me we get down in the weeds, and is there any, do we have a source of data for what works, what doesn't work? Does it really work to spend all this money cleaning the buses? Does it do anything? Do we know?
Yes. Yes, we do know it helps prevent the spread of bacteria, viruses, and germs. Cleaning the buses is an essential. When New York City closes their subways, which runs 24 hours a day, to clean, disinfect their subways, that tells you how important it is to clean the surfaces. So we do know that it is a requirement that transit clean their vehicles as much as they possibly can now. They said it is leaning away from surfaces, but you still can get it from surfaces, which is why there's a recommendation that we're not collecting fares because those are high touch areas. That's why we're not doing it. So there is a correlation between touching high touch surfaces and catching the virus. It's just not as great as they thought it was going to be, but you still can get the virus, have it on your hand and touch your face and you get it. So we're still doing that, but it is easier for you to catch it aerosol.
Becca, would you like to and respond to what Trevor said? I'm sorry, Randy. Excuse me.
Couldn't tell if Randy was still going.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I thought Randy was.
That's okay. I didn't get an answer. Is the FDA giving us current guidelines that
yes,
that all of you guys can look at and see what the best practice is based on what the science is right now, and that's what we're trying to do. So, for example, our HEPA filters part of those guidelines? You know, it seems to me that's the kind of thing that we shouldn't try to be the experts on. We should have some repository of, you know, the best scientific knowledge for. That's all. I don't know what it is. I'm just raising the issue, and is it just the Wild West and everybody's on their own? That's sort of my question.
Well, without a doubt, the American Public Transportation Association and then the Community Transportation Association, both national public transit entities, they are passing on some of the, I guess, best practices from their members who are sharing that information. So while there's looking to FTA for some definitive direction, probably won't yield us much of a result as looking towards our peers that are seeing some successes and want to share that. That's almost on a daily basis, we're getting that kind of information to help kind of shape some of these decisions. But it's, I think, again, it's best practices and seeing how they pan out long-term is probably more of where the attention would be going forward.
And Randy, I don't know that if you can see it, but Garland and Becca were nodding their heads yes when Brad was speaking.
But I would also say that the state did put out a memo, I guess it was like March 27th or 28th, that basically gave some guidance for transit agencies as far as COVID pandemic response. So I actually gave that information out to our city council, and I remember giving it to Trevor to distribute on the county side, but it gave us some recommendations, some guidelines, kind of things they wanted us to do, which was, you know, like heightened communication, only operate for essential trips, suspend fare collection, rear door boarding, limit the number of passengers. There was a lot of things that they were in as far as recommendation, and Kat is following all of them.
And Randy, Jessica just put up in the chat the CDC guidelines for transit employers.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, that's good. So yeah.
Becca, would you like to add to the conversation, especially regarding what Trevor was asking, I guess, is where we kind of.
And so I'll just wrap up the other, although we are not federally funded or funded through DRPT, fortunately, all of these resources, whether it's the trade associations, DRPT, CDC, it's all published online, and we are using those same best practices. All the transit properties are. So I just want to assure everybody that we are all on the same page in terms of where we're looking for that data. But to get back to kind of like reset back to what going back to all the way back to Trevor's question, we think that some of the permanent changes that we're going to be seeing ahead is the commitment to telework, as everybody said, but the little wrinkle I'd add to that is telemedicine, you know, and how that has changed healthcare, and contactless and web-based transactions or customer service. You know, we may not have the exact same version of what of paying a fare, but yet we have had success, and we will permanently adopt web-based customer service and web-based transactions and contactless transactions and such. So I just wanted to add that our planning horizon, Trevor, you know, as the emergency has unfolded, you know, at first your planning horizon was really short and we were in really quick cycles. But in case people hadn't seen it, and this was on my update today, UVA did announce today the alterations to the academic calendar. So we are now planning through May of 2021. And, you know, so we're kind of stabilizing somewhat, such that at least the spinning is not so fast. And then we are, UVA is starting to put out the budget guidance for FY22, and the assumptions, and they'll get more refined than this, but is that the impacts of the pandemic are going to, like the direct impacts of limited gatherings and, you know, all that stuff is going to last through the first 2 quarters of FY22.
Okay.
So if that helps.
Yeah.
But like Garland, you know, in terms of our everyday life, the bus drivers and the road supervisors, they're all coming to work, but it's like, who's getting on board the bus? That's the profile that's really changing significantly. Our academic routes boardings are down 76%. And our parking lot shuttles are boardings are down 22%. And yet the hospital, which is very stable in terms of, its everyday life, runs every single day, but their patient counts are back up and all that stuff. But our between teleworking and telemedicine, our demand for parking and transportation services is down about 20%.
And while I'm not speaking to the percentages, I think that certainly will continue.
Yes, that is a permanent.
Yes, we just don't know what the percentages will be, but that will certainly continue. That's right. So let me go with that. And I'm sorry to because I'm keeping an eye on my time. But I know that we have talked about the fact that the transit services right now are fare free. I would be interested in hearing what that means now and in the future and what your budget implications might be, because it certainly has always seemed like to me that if people could just get on the bus and ride it, and I don't know, Chip, we have some examples of other communities that have done that for maybe years. But I'd be interested in knowing the fare-free piece and the ridership and having a little discussion about that. Chip, you and I have talked about that. You could maybe speak to it a little bit.
Certainly. There are examples of, I would call us a medium-sized type of system, especially if you take into account UTS, JAUNT, and CAT, that have been doing this. I do always like to preface the definition. A lot of people think fare free is free, and it's not. Somebody's paying. It just may not be the end consumer handing a dollar bill over to the driver. Somebody is paying, but I have seen it directly experienced where there are a lot of benefits, especially now, if you're trying to create a contactless transaction. You do get to eliminate a certain amount of administrative and financial accounting cost because you aren't dealing with cash anymore and you aren't dealing with those type of financial transactions. I will say too, most of the cases where I have seen it are college communities where the university is a big beneficiary of the public transit system. And so, and why I say it's not free, somebody writes one check instead of 1 million people handing over 75 cents. But it's something that is being talked about. I know more now during the pandemic, and a lot of transit agencies have had an opportunity to experience it and see how it goes. And so they do have some lessons learned, whether they're good lessons or bad lessons, that's up for each individual system. But I know it's something that's probably getting more discussion right now than it has in the recent past.
And it would seem like to me you could correct me, Chip, if I'm wrong, but if you can get your ridership up, you can pull more money down from the federal government and supplant the local monies with some federal dollars, at least in some cases.
Well, I think, and especially with the new system that DRPT was going to, I'll have to rely especially on Garland here, and also Brad as to, excuse me, I'm not sure, everything they were trying to change the way they funded systems right when the pandemic hit. So even if it's delayed, I'm sure that they'll get back to it. But that ridership does have a big play into your grant funding.
So I think all of our systems locally have had, and I'll use the word fare free, but recognizing that it's not always free to everybody, but haven't we been doing that for what, 5 months? I'd be interested to know how that's playing out for our providers, and just a little bit of a discussion about that might be worthwhile today.
We've been operating for 8 months, fare free.
8 months. Okay, I was wrong. My, how time flies.
How time flies. So when we were putting the budget together last year, around this time, and we were working through the CARES money potentially coming down the line, we estimated about 10 months of money that would take care of offsetting revenue shortfalls. It was a gradual scale at the last couple of months, getting us back to like 50% and then back to 100% of what we were normally collecting. I don't think the model that we put together is going to materialize, but there is potentially the way we're managing the budget here at CAT. I think we'll be able to manage with the CARES money that we have available to us to close that gap. So there won't be any need to, at this point in time, it doesn't look like there's going to be any need to ask for additional dollars. We can manage within the budget that we have. But there's a lot. And I would just say, it sounds like there's some interest about going fare free. I'm glad to hear that, because I think there is a potential opportunity on the horizon, and I really want to potentially go forward with a grant opportunity to take CAT fare free. It's a scale, so it'll be a couple of years, almost like a pilot project to see, and then if it works, then you potentially have money for another couple of years. But it's not an endless stream, right? So at some point in time, the jurisdictions will have to pick up the cost, but it will be a way to prime that pump to get us moving towards fare free.
Interesting. Okay. Brad, would you like to speak to it there?
Just that the state was moving towards that. And I think, Chip, correct me if I'm wrong, if you noticed this during the presentation, but I think they're suspending the piece of the legislation that got approved in February. Actually, Neil's on, so he could speak to it, of whether or not they're going to allow for that. They were going to provide a certain amount of funding to help test out fare free in areas and communities that wanted to try it. And I think that's kind of being suspended right now. Neil, you might be able to speak to that. Okay, I was wrong in understanding.
Well, it's being postponed a little bit. And so our normal grant program will again start on December 1st, but this part which is part of the TRIP program, and it has two pieces. One is regional transportation, and one is, well, we are changing the terminology to zero fares. So, because I know Chip talked about the fare free, and so the reason why we're moving from that, and so our goal is to have a grant program, but it'll probably go out a little bit in a different period than our normal grants. And we will probably in November put out some information to transit systems to maybe give us an RFI, request for information, of us probably putting some guidance out and seeing what people are interested in doing, and then trying to give some direction of what we can do and what have you. And I guess some of that really now what we're fielding also on our side is how much funding will be available and for how long and things of that sort. So it is certainly this was a program before the pandemic, and before anybody was doing, for the state pretty went completely with no fares because of the pandemic. But now that some are, and some have already stated that they're staying with no fares for a longer period of time. Greater Richmond Transit is, and some are rurals who, at the end of the day, collecting fares probably wasn't really that big for what they cost them to account for the fares. Probably wasn't worth their time. And so, but we will have something probably going out in the middle of November, which will follow with a webinar. And so the first year will be a little bit off of our regular grant period.
Well, that's pretty interesting information. I'm happy to hear that, actually, Neil. That's great.
And it does stem to what someone just said a minute ago, and that is ridership does tie to more potential state funding. I say potential because if everybody's ridership went up in the state, then you're not getting a bigger piece of the pie. But when GRTC redid their network, they saw spikes in ridership, and that resulted in getting a bigger piece of the state funding, I believe, for FY20.
Right, and state funding will stay under the same requirements of looking at what we call performance, which ridership is one of the elements and is a weighing process over different measurements, and it so will, but we certainly have to take in large consideration or work into a weighing of how the COVID ridership is affect that across the board. So, which is some cases, I mean, obviously shut down ridership completely in certain areas. So that's certainly what we've been working with here in the last few days, looking at that type of information.
Good to know. Becca, you wanted to say, you had your hand up, yeah.
Yeah, so University Transit, everybody knows, does not collect a fare at all, and hasn't. What we consider our program with CAT to be a reciprocal ridership program, such that UTS provides service on Grady, Rugby, 14th Street, JPA. We just open the doors and anybody boards, and then UVA employees or students with an ID can board, or this is all pre-COVID, board CAT routes without paying the fare. And it isn't a wash, because in the end the university does end up paying CAT $250,000 a year or so, which we are doing right now, despite there being no fares collected from anyone else. So there are segments of our regional transit that already are fare free, no fare collected, the trolley, and the public service aspects of UTS are already fare free. And we've talked about the passenger counts and what would be a appropriate understanding of reporting UTS's passenger counts to the National Transit Database, if that's the right thing, recognizing that we are the public provider on certain streets, and it is a reciprocal ridership program between CAT and UTS. I mean, I'm looking around who has been here longer than I have, I guess. Look as, but CAT used to run on Massey Road and Arlington Boulevard and Rugby Road, and because of our coordination of our routes and such, CAT was able to reallocate resources to other routes, and UTS became the public provider on certain roads.
Well, this is going to be interesting. I guess there's more to follow on this, and it sounds like from what Neil is saying that DRPT is interested as well. So that kind of leads us into a discussion perhaps, and I'm keeping an eye on my time as best I can, but about ridership and ridership reporting and where we are with that, because I know, speaking for myself, and I think I've heard B speak to this as well, it would really be great to know what our ridership is and what our spots are where our citizens are wanting to get on. And just briefly, because I know we don't have a lot of time here, where do we stand on ridership numbers? And
I can go first if you want. First of all, I'd like the minutes to reflect that we have never charged a fare. Okay.
You're on. Very good.
They have to take lunch.
Albemarle County Public Schools.
So normally we do, we're very archaic. So we do counts by hand, and we do it typically 1 or 2 weeks in the fall, and then we report that to the state. Well, the state said don't do any until the spring. Okay. So just anecdotally, we're probably transporting, probably 10% of the students we would normally transport.
Okay. All right. Garland, you want to talk about, because we've talked about CAT ridership numbers before, but I'll let you have the floor here for a couple of minutes. I'm going to keep my eye on my time.
So I don't know where you want me to start. So we've had this conversation a few times, and I think I'll go back to we've got to fix the fare box issue so we can accurately count, right? So we've had a conversation at RTS about getting more detailed information. I'm working on that solution. That solution is actually getting APCs, automatic passenger counters, permanently installed on our vehicles. That RFP is hitting the street in 2 weeks. We have had our consultant that we have on board right now. They had a relationship with a provider that could put temporary APCs on our routes, on our buses, and we've been getting some really good information, which has allowed us to start formulating some very much needed data on, mileage, the length of time, the layover, everything that you normally would do in a planning process when you're developing routes and schedules. So that has been very helpful. It's also allowing us to see time of day where people are getting on and off. It's a small sample. So we're going to use that though because remember, we only put it on 6 buses and we're rotating it because it's a pretty expensive endeavor to have those on our vehicles. But we're learning a lot, and we'll be able to create, which I'm working on right now, is ability to show you all. So I'm working on a small dashboard that'll allow you to see some of that information.
Oh, okay.
Won't be able to show you, unfortunately, every single trip, every single one on your routes or the county or the city, because there's not enough APCs to go around. But what we'll be able to do is show you the number of trips that we've sampled where the on and offs are. When we get the permanent ones, we will be able, though, at that point in time, to start doing all kinds of reporting. Now, there is a period of time when we do the install to working out the bugs to getting it perfected. That's about 4 to 5 months. So then I'm going to put it in, and you're going to have, just the wonderful reports all together. There is a period of time that we've got to work through the mechanics of fine tuning the percentages of, it's called a discount rate. So how many people getting on and getting off? Oh, I got on the wrong bus and I need to discount that because they're not actually a riding passenger. Or the time that the driver gets on and off at the end of the line because they're going to the restroom or just the bus. So all of those things need to be factored in and done as a part of the calculation. But we are hopefully moving closer and closer to getting the APCs and then moving through the process to switch our counts from a more of a manual process to this more highly, more technology-driven solution that will provide better information for everyone.
Chip, you had a monthly operations report in our packet. We had a fairly significant, do you want to speak to that for a minute since it was included in our packet?
Yes, just briefly because it's in there, and Jessica had helped assemble this data of just some examples of some public reporting documents that go out. And we just included it as an example, and I think Garland's explanation is very, very timely because it also gives time for, and there's a group of folks who are meeting on this and trying to drill down into it, because if you remember when Ned Galloway, I can't remember if it was with the RTP or with the MPO policy board, Ned was very adamant, and I think rightfully so, to say, reporting is very, very important. But for the decision makers, there's a certain set of data that's useful to them. For the transit providers, they're looking a lot of the data for service delivery. The decision makers may want to see things in an abbreviated format and in a way that's more useful for them. And so what this group will try to do, and during that time period, as Garland just said, it'll be a while for this data to really be meaningful to the non-providers, that they'll be able to come up with and work with each of the members of the RTP to say, what would be helpful for you as you go back to your elected body, or in the case of JAUNT, the board, of being able to, that the data that will be useful for you. And then somewhere in between will be that report that will be generated for the public and being able to produce on a regular basis. We just included that packet. I think it's from somewhere in Arizona. So just to give you kind of an idea of something to look at and start to say, well, wow, this is useful, but this doesn't mean anything to me. Because we don't want to produce any type of graphs or numbers if it's not useful. It just clouds all of the useful data.
Great, thank you. And based on our time, if it's okay, unless someone else has anything they want to add, I'm going to move us over, Chip, to.
One thing I will add, Diantha, is for JAUNT, the urban ridership is still down around half, and it's been leveled off for the last month or so. We were seeing an increase, but now it's level. Rural is around 40% of what we usually do, and that's including commuter. The thing that I want to bring to your attention is we are aware of some of the typical Medicaid trips that are counted as agency trips, not public trips. They are, because we're fare free, they are possibly appearing as public trips because no one has to pay. So we're going to be investigating that more, but we're hearing more and more that those type of trips are not going through the typical process to get scheduled, that they're being scheduled as public trips.
Oh, interesting.
We don't have we're not the gatekeepers of that. There's company, third-party brokers that do that gatekeeping. So we're not sure who qualifies and who doesn't. So it's kind of hard for us to really peel back the layers. But if that is in fact happening, it's skewing, our urban numbers for the most part, but then also it's taking up perceived capacity that on the agency side, the non-public transit trip side, they're supposed to be recovering 100% of that cost or paying for 100% of that cost. And so in a way, it's a double ding. It's hurting our capacity and the funding. So we're looking into it more, but we don't have any real evidence to provide you other than things we're hearing about.
Great, thank you. And I appreciate you stopping me because I had not asked you about ridership, so thank you. So Chip, let's move on then to long-term goal setting.
Sure.
We have here the regional visioning plan, which I think we've talked about.
We have, if I could, now that Neil has joined us, and Neil, before you were able to join us, I was on the CTB meeting earlier this week, and I hope it wasn't just me, but before the end of the meeting, it cut off from its online capacity. So I missed a good portion of the action meeting, but it was my understanding that no real actions were taken and that a lot of this will be pushed out. But then I also heard that the 6-year plan that included the 2 applications that we have for the planning grants, I heard conflicting. It would be heard in November, and then I also heard December.
Well, actually, there is a 6-year draft that can be found on our website.
Right.
And so under the state requirements, there has to be a public hearing on the step. So that has not been planned or scheduled. And so there is no Commonwealth Transportation Board meeting in November. And so the actual projects per se will be approved in the December meeting.
Okay.
And that goes with what Allison DeTunk said to us, that
right.
Be voted on in November, I mean, in December. That's what she
December.
said.
So you can go in there, and it does have, what it doesn't have is the, right today is our construction districts, which would break down JAUNT and CATS, all their projects individually. It does have the total capital, and it does have the total operating that's being, or I think the operation's broken down, but it does have the listing of the special projects. So they are there. And so, at the end, we were very, very thrilled that the state was able to come up with, the funding was there for a lot that was, that obviously in April, May, we didn't think would be moved forward.
Yeah.
So it is there. And so I guess, I know everybody's anxious to move on, but it will be December before they're formally, and then we would then certainly move contracts as fast as we can. I'm sure they're going to be prepared beforehand.
Okay, thank you.
That's great, Neil.
Yeah.
I was thinking that one of the presenters that said November, he just misspoke, thinking next month is November, but
yeah,
we had been
well,
told
there was a lot of discussion about November, so that's not, there
Okay,
was a lot of discussion that November could, that it was possible they weren't even going to review these projects or approve this draft and do it in November, but normally they don't have a November meeting.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sounds
and
good.
I think so much of our long range planning, depends on if that visioning plan is awarded or not. So I think that our January meeting will really be focused around that long range planning for us. And we will then hopefully have the concrete decision from the Commonwealth Transportation Board by that time.
Right.
And I think within that planning process, we will be working very closely with the RTP to put together the scope of work for that visioning plan and the types of things that we want included, as we talked about earlier. One of the items in our strategic planning is what we've got here is the umbrella marketing and branding. And that would be something that, honestly, I believe it could happen whether before, during, or after the visioning plan process, is looking at just a marketing effort so that all of our transit providers begin to be seen as one group. Now, everybody with their own individual identity, but the strategic planning just gave the direction that we could go out and begin to create very similar to what JAUNT, CAT, and UTS has done with the pandemic and promoting themselves together, working together for safety precautions, but start to take that to further extremes. And I don't know the details of exactly what it would look like, but something so that people coming to the community, if they aren't familiar with our systems, they see a unified voice, even though they are separate systems. That would be something I think that we would want to talk about in January, that whether we would want to initiate something like that early or wait until the plan brings it out. So that's why we just included it here. But I really encourage any of you that hasn't seen that to look it up, pull it up, and take a look at that strategic planning process that we underwent. And that's it.
And then the other thing we had on the agenda was growth in service areas and land use planning.
If Diane, if I could ask Neil about CAT's strategic plan requirement, has that shifted any? I know we were coming up next year on them having their new strategic plan being developed.
That's a good question, which I don't think I have a direct answer. I mean, I don't know if Garland knows his last conversation with planning, with grants people on that they're sort of directing that. And we have been moving on, scheduling these things. So I'm not sure, certainly don't want to disrupt something, that's will be going on separately, or in concert. So we'll probably,
When I
fine.
bring it up because the long range planning, if
Right.
we're seeing maybe in the summer of next year, we're starting the strategic planning that DRPT requires, that hopefully will dovetail into what Chip was just speaking about, that
Right.
we're lining the two up and not doing double work or whatever it might
Right,
be.
exactly.
So, Chip, I think maybe throw it in your lap to figure out from DRPT when the timing of that might actually be happening, or optimistically be happening, just for maybe the RTP to be keeping it on their radar for, even if it's 8 months from now, 8 months will be here before we know it, especially when we talk about a strategic plan at that level. And it's a fairly detailed level planning effort from what I understand.
Yes.
Brad, I appreciate that. I think that's great. And we'll certainly take that ball and run with it, because, and I think that there will have to be a lot of discussions both locally with you providers and with DRPT, because, I can see the advantages of having joint community meeting sessions, saving economies of scale there. There may be some benefit of trying to have the same consultant. There may be some real pitfalls of having the same consultant.
Right.
I think it's something that we would want to look at and make decisions on locally, and then confer with DRPT to see what their thoughts are on things like that. So yes, we'll certainly begin that conversation.
Yeah. Thank you, Brad. That's good point.
That's great. Just a comment on land use planning, because we're running out of time, and B, jump in if you would like to, but certainly in Albemarle County, we're recognizing that fixed routes aren't going to serve our population by themselves. And we're talking about what fixed routes and on demand would look like, right? So that we can serve our population. And that sort of gets me to the land use planning, not for today, but it would be maybe a good conversation at some point, because we hardly have a proposal that comes to us now that doesn't talk about the need for some sort of transit or on demand. And we're talking about transit stops that also offer opportunities for on demand, and looking at them as maybe multimodal stops with bike racks, shelters, charging stations, perhaps. So at some point, it would be great for this body to be able to have that discussion. Any thoughts, B?
Yes, there's something else that I would also like to see is a loop system. So for example, you have a lot of people on Pantops in the Cascadia area. They can't get over without taking their lives in hand, but they can't get over to JAUNT and the shopping center that's there very easily. But if there were some kind of a loop system that goes all along Route 250 in the Pantops area, that would really be a safe way to get people, from one side to the other. That way encourages walking. And then that way they can do their shopping or whatever, and then, get on the other side of the street. But some kind of a loop system, that would be nice. I also know that we can't, for example, we have developments going on in 250, and we want to have a affordable housing component. We can't, because there's no transit, right? Like Breezy Hill, there's no transit there. So staff and Planning Commission have said, give them a proffer, be able to use the money elsewhere, because there's no transit out there. So that is a problem in the rural areas. And maybe with the rural areas, something like a park and ride, where we can get the people out in the rural areas to a park and ride, and then from there have a fixed route system that the town.
So it would be great to have a discussion at some point after the first of the year about all of this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
With that though, if no one has any other comments, and I'm open for comments, I'm not trying to rush us so much.
So can I just?
Sure. Absolutely, Garland.
So from what I'm hearing is that because we're going to be starting the development for the 22 budget, right? And so we're all starting that process basically now. So it sounds like from this broad discussion that right now, CAT is really in a holding pattern. It's not really talking about expansion in the county. Is that kind of what I surmise?
Well, I'm not sure I'm saying that exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Yes, I
know we're
can-
going to need fixed routes, but we
Right.
don't know that you can't possibly serve all of our community, right?
Right, we have a
Can.
lot,
We
we have a
could,
lot,
I can if there's fun.
we couldn't afford for you
funding
to
it.
serve all of our community. Let's put it that way. So
Okay.
we're looking at every option possible, but we really aren't there yet. But we want to include this body in our discussions, right?
Right. So my only saying that is because my planning process for the state, if you're talking about potentially doing any expansion of service, if I need vehicles, I've actually got to get in that pipeline now. So I need to put it in to 22.
And that gets to what B was talking about. And I get that.
2 years out.
right.
You'll have
And
to-
I like to see something where there are smaller buses or jaunt buses that do the loop. CAT buses do the longer runs because, we have developments on 29. We have North Point, we have Brook Hill, other developments that are coming up that would be great to be able to have, a fixed route where people can, get into town from those areas. So that's where CAT's really going to come in handy.
So if you're okay, can we schedule a quick Zoom sometime next week and just talk through some things?
Trevor, we can, sure. I mean, we B and I can't speak for our entire board. You understand that, but, but sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I don't know whether next week is work, but certainly soon. I can't commit to the schedule, but Trevor, I think we would need to do something with Kevin and some of the folks and see where we are. Yep.
Yep. And include also Brad.
Yep. That's right. Okay, that sounds good. So let me move us on real quickly to CAT, JAUNT, UTS, Rideshare, Albemarle Schools, provider update. And we may have covered most of what you might have told us, but Colin, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I just want to reiterate that, as a part of the planning process, CAT's efforts right now are really trying to get at giving good data, right? So I know that's been a problem with CAT over the last few years. Just got to reiterate the fact that until I really get those APCs in, it's going to be hard to give you really good detailed information, but we're working as fast as we can to get that. But I will say that hopefully in the next week or so, I'll be able to share you with kind of preliminary dashboard of what we've got. So you can take a look at it and see, what you feel, how you feel, and give me some feedback.
Sure. Okay. John, Brad?
Nothing else to add. Nope.
You're good? UTS.
Well, we're not good, but nothing else to add.
I'm sorry. You all are doing a great job as far as we're concerned. Becca.
I would like to very, very publicly thank Kat for the Guardians of the Road PSA. Cannot thank you enough. Super talented in-house person that did that. That is a high quality message. Thank you. Point everybody to UVA's website. They did announce today the alterations to the academic calendar. I think I did mention that, but I didn't want that lost because it does affect demand throughout the transit systems. We already talked about our ridership. UTS is in the midst of our annual rider survey. Right now it's closed up. I think it closed up last week, but by next meeting, we're going to have some data to report on our ridership. We did take advantage of asking a few questions about COVID, passenger comfort, or passenger mentality when it comes to COVID. So that might be interesting for our next meeting.
Oh, good.
And the last thing is the some construction project that's been on the books for, I went back, it's been on the books for 7 years. UVA calls it the Contemplative Science Commons, and it's located on Emmett Street. The reason I bring it up is because our shared bus stop, that is one of our premier shared bus stops at Bavaro Hall on Emmett Street southbound, is going to be impacted by that construction within the next few months. So given our schedule, it may, I'll be in touch with the other directors and stuff, but just for the RTP to know, there's a construction project coming that will be very, very, very impactful on Emmett Street on grounds.
Yeah, you all are doing a lot of work up in that area.
Yeah.
Whole entryway is changing.
Yes.
Yes.
So thank you. If
Okay.
you haven't seen McCormick Road, many great improvements there for people with disabilities and general access. So.
Oh, great. That's good news. And then rideshare. Sarah.
Yeah, so we are kind of like a lot of the transit companies still waiting to get the final funding from DRPT, but we have the first 2 quarters through and eagerly excited to hear all about that. We do have some updates regarding what the focus for a lot of the rideshare programming has been so far, which is on telework. So we have partnered with the Community Climate Collaborative here in town. And we actually just had a lunch and learn on Tuesday where rideshare was the featured speaker regarding formal telework policies, which Trevor, you gave an excellent plug for how important formal telework policies are. I might have to get a soundbite on that for you, but that is one of the big undertakings that rideshare has the ability to do with Telework VA, which is a program through DRPT, is to really help folks figure out how to move telework into the future and to make it really work for their organization. Everybody did the best they could in the fast moving change that was the pandemic, but now's the time to figure out how to establish that program and to keep it working for you in the future. So that is one of the big fun undertakings that we have for rideshare, which I am very excited about. We are also working to put together some commute stories to showcase some of the folks in our area and how they are choosing to make that commute or to telework. That also counts. And we have been working with DRPT and the Central Shenandoah PDC on social media all this month to showcase Transit Appreciation Month, which has been really fun. I know they've looked at all the different transit agencies throughout the state, so we've made sure that anytime they post about anything with a transit agency in our regions, that is featured on our social media sites as well. So fun things.
Great, thank you. And who's next? Albemarle Schools. Jim.
No, I have nothing to add.
Garland, do you have anything from the viewpoint of Charlottesville schools?
Nothing at this point.
Okay, all right. The next item is CAT Advisory Board update. And I think I've been hearing, I heard something from the city about the CAT Advisory Board being re-looked at or something. Who would want to speak to that for us? Garland or Lloyd or Nakaya? I'm not sure who. Isn't there some work going on with that particular board?
My dim recollection is that, so let me preface this. We on council looked at our list of committees and commissions and boards and so on and found that we were appointing members to about 50 boards. And we had frankly, no contact with many of them. Many of them did not report to council. My recollection, Garland, you may correct me, or Nakai, either one, but my recollection is that we decided that the CAT Advisory Board was going to be advisory to Garland, not advisory to council from here on out. Is that your recollection?
Still going to be advised to us.
So they're still going to advise you. What I asked and there was a consideration about not, potentially not even having a CAT Advisory Board. I think it was important to keep it. I think we need to look at potentially changing the makeup of it.
Mm-hmm.
Some individual, I think, from the business council to put on there. But we also need to refocus this energy to really figure out what they can do the technical work, I believe, to give council more reliable information or information that you want, as opposed to you working through a kind of a work session. But we need to figure out what that looks like, right? So I'm working on right now, and I think I got the go ahead to actually bring in a consultant to actually look at the context of the board and how it can be, how this advisory group can help put us on the right track to take advantage of what Richmond did, is, long-term getting in a pipeline for hopefully long-term getting direct funding, a direct funding model put in place here. So there will be a way for us to potentially enhance service without tapping into every jurisdiction's general fund.
Interesting.
And it was still, we discussed, or the conversation that you've been bringing up since I've been on council, Diantha, but about the importance of Albemarle County ridership being represented on the commission. So we, or the advisory board. So we know that in UVA, there's a spot. So we're not eliminating any of those spots, just trying to make sure that the information that we receive is beneficial and that the advisory board feels like they have work, so a charge, and that they're not wasting their time, and that council is able to set a clear direction for the work we want them to do during their time serving on the board.
And I think that's great work for you guys. I think it's absolutely needed, and I applaud it because obviously Albemarle County would like to be at the table, but I agree with Garland, the business community and even the university needs to be at the table as well. If at some point when you're all restructuring it, that's what, and I see Bea nodding her head too. So anyway.
Well, they were current advisory board members. I just wanted to make sure that no one thought that we discussed eliminating.
Yes, that's good. That's good.
Oh no, I was nodding because I was hoping, we have like 80 some committees and I was hoping you were paring down, and then I said, well, let's follow Charlottesville.
Well, and that's
we
one of
did
the
in
things
fact
that,
pare
yes,
down.
he's right. We have like 64 or 74.
Yeah.
We've been
Yeah.
out addressing those as well. So we're with you on the number of committees. That's a problem.
Yeah, we did in fact pare down. We completely got rid of about 4 or 5. There are a number of others that we basically gave to a department to say, this is your baby. It doesn't have to come through council. So,
Yeah.
and one of the things we wanted to do was to reduce the number. I'm sure you all have the same problem. Everybody wants a member of the board or the member of council to be a liaison, a participating member of their committee. And there simply aren't enough days in the week for all of us to do all of those meetings. And
That's
so it was an attempt in part to get control of this workflow.
Yeah.
Good.
And we get it. So
We need to do the same thing.
yeah, it's getting close to time. Is there anyone that has any other business that they want to bring up?
Madam Chair, I would just, one is just to make sure if Neil has anything from DRPT.
Oh, I forgot, Neil. I'm sorry.
All right.
And there's one item, if he doesn't bring up, I'll bring up.
Now, what
Okay.
is that?
The CARES Act funding, I know that was recommended for, and it has, I don't think it's been voted on yet, but you all recommended for the Afton Express.
The Afton Express has been is one of our demo projects. It has been recommended for funding, so it'll be in the same package as all our CARES funding, as all our projects are in the CARES funding. And so we are recommending to assign 80% of the total cost to CARES, and then 20% will be a local cost to be in line with the rest of our demo projects. And so that's the thing. And so just to remind that at this point, we are looking to do our grant applications at the same time this year, which would be December 1st to February 1st. We have not set a grantee workshop meeting, but we think we will. TDM will have one separately than transit. And we do think we're leaning towards the first week of December because in most cases, people don't really jump into the grants till they're open. And so our grantee meeting earlier it'll help us to be a little bit more, but we're a little bit delayed on that, but we're working towards that. We are running daily our Piedmont Express from starting in Danville, coming from Charlottesville. Certainly our ridership has been a little slow to grow. But Charlottesville's numbers have picked up a little bit from Charlottesville to, and then bringing people to Charlottesville. But we are working on some marketing ideas. And again, I guess as UVA gets back in more swing things and stuff, we'll see. We've had our original route, which is the Valley Flyer, has actually done very well. Of course, we do have social distancing on the buses, so it's only 27 people, but we've actually on certain weekends, we've added extra buses on there. So we understand that this is going to take some time, but we do think it was important to start these routes.
That's great. That's good news. All right. With that, and I apologize, Neil, I forgot.
No, fine. Thank you.
Is there any other business that anybody would like to bring up? We have our next meeting is January the 28th. And Becca, can we plan on maybe putting your survey on that agenda? That would be great. So that gives us direction so we can assume that. That's great. And the only other thing I wanted to point out was I wanted to thank JAUNT for offering rides to our voters to the polls. And Garland, I'm sure you all are taking people in the city to the polls. But John has graciously offered anyone who wants to go from Albemarle County to the polls that they will provide a ride for them, which is really excellent. So with that, if hearing no objections, I will adjourn us until January. And I certainly hope everybody has a wonderful and safe holiday. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.